This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Derek, I think we have the whole board here now. Hey, Ashley.
Hi, everyone.
Hello again.
All right, Derek, I'm going to start the meeting, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors meeting of March 16th, 2021. To start the meeting, will you please stand if you can and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded using GoToMeeting. So we can have as smooth a teleconference meeting tonight as possible. Please note the following. While listening, keep yourself muted to eliminate distracting background noise. Each agenda item requiring a vote will proceed with a motion and a second by a board member, followed first by board member comments and questions, and then second by public comment and questions before a roll call vote is taken. When wishing to speak, please address myself as the meeting chair requesting to comment and announce your name. And note there is also an open public comment period at the end of the agenda this evening. All right, so our first agenda item tonight is discussion and possible approval of Ordinance 1/2021 and the cable television franchise agreement with Verizon. And I believe Tom Esty is with us tonight.
Thank you,
Tom.
Mr. Chairman. Nice to be here.
Welcome.
You have before you tonight a proposed ordinance which would renew your cable television franchise with Verizon. Pennsylvania, the agreement was actually negotiated by the Cohen Legal Group on behalf of several municipalities in Chester County and throughout the state. Cohen Group is an expert on these types of matters. So we do have a hearing on this ordinance tonight. It would extend the franchise for 5 years. I believe you've been provided with a memorandum from the Cohen Group explaining some of the changes in the franchise agreement compared to your existing agreement. Perhaps one of the major ones is that this is a 5-year agreement. Your previous agreement, I believe, was 10 years with a 5-year extension. And Verizon has decided that they do not want to enter into these agreements beyond 5 years, I think primarily because of the changing nature of the cable industry. So in any event, we have 2 exhibits to make part of the record, the proof of publication showing that notice of this meeting where you would consider this ordinance was advertised in the Daily Local on March 1st, and also Exhibit B2, which is a copy of correspondence from this office to the Chester County Law Library and the Daily Local News, supplying them with a full copy of the ordinance. So it would be appropriate to have discussion on the ordinance and receive any public comment and then consider enactment, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. So, board members, do you have any questions or comments you wish to make regarding the ordinance?
Yeah, I have some questions. Tom, are you from the Cohen Group?
No, I'm Kristen, one of Kristen's partners at Buckley Bryant.
Are you prepared to be able to answer some questions though about the ordinance? And
I could try. I am somewhat familiar with the subject matter and the ordinance. I'll do my best. But as I said, it was prepared by Cohen, and I know that he did provide some written information to the board, but I'll give it a shot.
okay, that's fair enough. And Exhibit B is Section 5 under consumer complaints. It says under normal operating conditions, the franchisee shall investigate subscriber complaints referred by the township within 72 hours of receipt. So I just want to verify that this agreement puts in place or continues to enforce a mechanism there whereby a Verizon subscriber, if they had an ongoing issue with Verizon, could contact the township, and the township then in turn would refer that complaint to Verizon for resolution. Is that my understanding correct?
That's correct. And as in your previous agreement, there's an exhibit attached to this agreement, which is the customer service standards, which Verizon must adhere to in its relationship with the customers and your residents.
Because I don't think most Verizon subscribers, myself included, were ever aware of that provision available to them. Do you have any idea how many complaints the township has referred to Verizon over the past 5 years, and how many of those have been resolved?
I would have no idea. I know Mr. Lalonde's not here tonight. I don't know if Derek would have any information about that or not.
I don't have any specifics, but I can tell you it does not come up much on our end. I can think of maybe one from Comcast, but not Verizon.
Yeah, I don't think people are aware of it. Next question I have is Section 6.4.1 allows the township to conduct an audit of Verizon every 3 years. When was the last time that an audit was done, and were there any violations found on the part of Verizon?
Again, I can't answer that question. I think it's, from my experience in other municipalities, it's rather unusual to conduct an audit because typically the township receives its franchise fee. The audit primarily would be done to investigate whether they have included all the revenue sources in the 5% franchise fee, but I can't speak for your township. All I can say is it's fairly rare, if actually ever done, for an audit to occur.
I've been here 7 years. We have not done an audit since I've been here, John.
Okay.
I think it would happen if you saw a significant decrease in revenues, that might trigger a request for an audit. Of course, knowing that revenues are dropping off anyway because people are terminating their cable services.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question. In this month's Treasury report, there's an entry of $114,000 for the fourth quarter of 2020 for Verizon's franchise fees. My question is how does this compare to prior quarters for 2020, and have there been an overall decline in this revenue stream? I guess that might be better answered by Derek. Would you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I know they're trending down. I mean, I can get you the specific dates of what you're asking as far as the quarter progression of 2020 and even prior to that to see how it's progressing. But I can tell you it's gone down gradually just because people are cutting the cord more and more. Right. There may be a quarter where it trends up, but overall the progression is definitely down.
If you could give us that, I'm not trying to give you more work here, but if you can give us that information to have an idea where this revenue stream is going, that would be helpful, I think.
Sure.
All right, that's all I had, John.
Thanks, John. Other board members, questions for Tom or Derek?
I don't really have questions. I mean, I think there's a couple takeaways from like what I gathered from the information that we have in front of us. So the 5-year renewal agreement is probably better for the township, if I'm not mistaken, according to this law firm who kind of provided us with this information. And I'm comfortable with that. The only other issue that I saw was this whole thing about Verizon. Before, they used to give the township and schools these services for free. And now that's actually been revoked. And I guess in other parts of the state, they're being taken to court over that. So I'm not really sure how that's going to end up playing out later on. I wasn't really even aware that public buildings were receiving Verizon service for free up until I saw this. So that was just interesting. And I just want to verify this because I just went back to our budget. So our revenue stream is currently between 450,000 to like 480,000. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So The only other thing that I saw in here that might affect that, and perhaps positively, is that I guess in the new provision, Verizon is no longer allowed to take any discount. So when somebody buys the bundle with cable, internet, phone, Verizon offers those people a discount, and they're no longer able to apply that discount only to the cable, which basically eats into our revenue. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that sort of balances out any of the cord cutting, because the cord cutting is pretty significant. But you're correct.
Okay. Oh yeah, those are the only things, like big takeaways.
Thanks, Ashley. Robin, do you have any questions, or Hugh?
No, unfortunately, I wanted to read this page by page. It was just too much for me to absorb at one point, but I do have a question as to whether or not, John asked some very good questions, and I don't know whether or not we need to make a decision tonight, but if we had an opportunity to maybe get some of that information he requested, not from Tom, I assume they're going to be coming from Kristen. I don't know if there's anything here that anyone else is concerned about, but I think it's worthwhile getting some of these questions answered.
Robin, which particular question are you looking to get answered?
Well, I'm just dovetailing off of what John was asking for.
So the
So if we
question
need to
around
make a decision tonight, then we'd have.
Yeah.
If we need to make a decision tonight, we have outstanding information that might be relevant to our thoughts.
So John, did the answers satisfy your questions?
Well, the question that I had that was still open that Derek was going to pursue would be about, you know, the past revenues. What kind of a history do we have of that, and what trajectory you're looking at? That was the outstanding one. And also, I think he answered, but I don't know if there's any further research that needs to be done as far as the township having any problems from residents. From what he said, I believe he said there wasn't, only maybe something from Comcast. I don't know if there's any further need for any follow-up on that or not. If Derek could answer that. But the outstanding question I had that Derek was going to pursue would be, you know, what kind of revenue has this agreement generated for the township? And what does it look like for us in the future?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Robin,
that's an informational question though, John, right? It's just, you're just trying to make sure you understand the revenues that we have historically had and what the recent history is and where we are with the budget. Is that correct?
That's right. It's informational for the board. Is there a timeline, Tom, on when this ordinance needs to be passed? Are we locked into a specific timeline here?
Well, from what I understand, the current agreement has not expired yet. I'm sorry, I don't know when that expiration date is. Maybe Derek knows, maybe he doesn't. But I don't think it's expiring before your next meeting if you wanted to delay any decision. But all I heard was sort of questions about revenues. And of course, you would lose revenues if you decide not to renew the franchise. So, I mean, I don't think there are any outstanding legal issues. I can assure you that Cohen has a lot of expertise in this matter, and I am relatively certain in saying to you they've negotiated the best deal they can for the township.
Thanks, Tom. I have a question, Derek, relative to the facilities that are identified in Exhibit A as being provided with Verizon service. It lists the township buildings there, the police building, at the administration building, and also the sewer treatment plant, I believe. Was in their existing agreement, is there any schools listed? Because I did see that was mentioned in the law firm's description of what can be included in that exhibit.
Yeah, I did not see that. I had emailed today the school district. I didn't hear back yet. But that's also another outstanding question. I'm trying to gather as far as if currently Westchester Area School District is receiving any free boxes from Verizon for services. So I do not have the answer to that right now as far as if Westchester is.
Okay, thanks. And then my other question is the Comcast franchise agreement. Do we know when the expiration on that particular agreement is?
I want to say 2022, but I will confirm that as well.
If I may clarify one thing about the services to the township, as Cohen indicated, that's a result of an order from the Federal Communications Commission. It wasn't a direct demand from Verizon, although I suspect that Verizon and the other big cable providers were the ones who filed a complaint with the FCC. But in any event, that's a result of an FCC order, which is on appeal at the present time from some franchisees.
Yeah, my understanding, Tom, is that if that appeal is successful in terms of the ruling in favor of municipalities, that then the facilities listed in Exhibit A would be entitled to receive the free cable service or free Verizon service. So I just want to make sure that if the school district was interested in being a listed building to have that free service, I'd like to have it included. So that was really my question why I asked Derek about it. I realize that until that court case is appeal is resolved, we don't know the answer, but without it being listed in the exhibit, if we approve it as is, then school facilities would not be eligible for free service under this ordinance.
Yeah, that would be the only, just back to some of Robin's points, I think that would be the only legal issue as far as if anybody wants to hold this up past tonight. The other things, as mentioned by Sean, were more of informational purposes.
Okay, thanks. So are there any other board comments or questions? Otherwise, I'll ask for public comments. Hearing no further board questions, are there any members of the public who would wish to comment on this draft ordinance?
Good
Yeah,
evening.
Sean,
Go ahead, Doug.
Sean, this is Doug.
Go ahead,
Thank you, Margie.
Go ahead, Doug.
My question is, are there any changes in this ordinance which would cause rates to residents to increase?
No, there is not. The township doesn't have any control over the rates that Verizon charges to its customers. The agreement provides that the township is entitled to 5% of the gross revenues of Verizon, and gross revenues is a defined term, which includes various elements.
Okay, I see.
Doug, my understanding is that franchise fees are passed through to the customer, but the fees are prescribed by federal law, and that, as Tom just described, they represent 5% of the gross revenue as set forth in what was negotiated by this Cohen group.
Okay, thank you.
Archie, did you have a question or a comment?
I just have a comment, please.
Go ahead.
This is just, I think, a perfect example of the need to have that second meeting every month. And I believe this ordinance was advertised a day before the meeting 2 weeks ago. So it seems to me like, this could have easily been discussed 2 weeks ago and then put on the agenda for tonight. So that would have given the board an opportunity to receive feedback on some of their questions. So just a thought going forward, that you might want to direct staff to present that or have that on the agenda to be voted on 2 weeks later. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Are there any other questions or comments from public attendees tonight? Okay, hearing none, did the board want to proceed with a motion, or do you wish to wait till we hear resolution on both whether the school district would be a listed building in Exhibit A and the extra information about revenues that is for information that we've requested from Derek?
Sean, I'd like to make the motion to table it until we get those answers.
All right, Hugh, I don't think you need a motion. You just tell us that we're not going to proceed with a motion tonight. So we will revisit this at our next meeting, which is the board workshop, the first Tuesday in April.
Charles, just as a point of information, then will another legal notice be put out, have to be put out before the next meeting?
Derek, can you answer that?
It should be. I mean, technically, you could continue it until your next meeting, but my preference would be that you advertise it again.
I concur.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thank you. That concludes the discussion on the agenda item number 4. So now we're going to move to agenda item number 5, discussion and possible approval of the 2021 Township Street Paving Program bids. Dave Woodward, over to you.
Well, we received the annual paving bids last week. Myers came in as the low bid. 50,000 behind them was Duraco. It's actually a cheaper price this year than we paid last year for more work this year, slightly more work.
Dave, how many miles are we proposing to pave this year?
We stick with right around 5 miles each year, but the difference from year to year is the square yardage. Last year was 69,000 square yards. This year's 82,000 square yards.
Is that due to the particular roads that are earmarked for repaving?
Yeah, last year we had the last minute switch. Right as the bids were going out, we learned of the Aqua job in Box Elder. So there was a last minute switch, which kind of reduced the square yards a little bit.
Okay, I have one question to kick the board off here. So I see that on the items number 7 and 8, Alan Myers had a much lower price for those line items than the other bidders, which were all, certainly an order of magnitude different. Do you think that they understood what was meant by those line items and have bid appropriately? Or can you explain why they are different than the other 3 bidders?
Well, I think Tom had contact with them.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name's Tom Wilkes. I'm a project engineer with Carroll Engineering. I helped put together the contract documents and put this out to bid with the help of Public Works. So yes, that number, the items 7 and 8, they jumped out to me as well, and also to Dave and Casey. The dollar per ton is definitely negotiate or pricing. That number is relatively low, obviously, compared to the other ones. However, a companion to that item is number 5, which is the milling of the base material, and that number, number 6, milling the 5 inches base. That number is higher than what they bid last year, as well as their competitors. So I believe they're looking to make up a little bit with the actual milling number. And I did reach out to Alan Myers and made sure that they understood that dollar a ton was not a mistake, and they confirmed that is their pricing.
And they were the successful bidder for the 2020 paving program, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Do board members have questions for Dave or Tom?
I'll make the motion. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. Dave, could you give us locations where these projects are going to be done? I believe there's 5 of them, 5 locations.
Yeah, it's Hamlet Hill neighborhood, Amanda Lane and Fox Knoll off New Street, section of North New Street, south of 322, Taylor's Mill from Pottstown Pike to New Street, and the Box Elder development.
And when do you anticipate the work would start?
Because of the aqua work, we have them, they have to be done, Box Elder development, by the end of May. The rest of the work, I believe, is end of July.
Yeah.
But it's up to them. They may come in and do it all in one shot, which is typical for them. They usually mobilize once, come in, get it done, and get out.
Okay. And is notice given to the residents on the street prior to the work being done, just to inform them what's coming?
Yeah, the contractor is required by the contract to notify residents with the handbill. They're also required to post the streets. We put out a phone call, one of our CTY calls, as we're progressing through the contract, and we'll put it on the website, Facebook, all that.
Okay, good deal. Thanks, Dave.
Any other questions?
I'd
No,
like to make a motion that Alan Myers, go ahead, Agnes. Ashley, go ahead.
I just had a quick comment.
Sorry.
We live on a street that was paved last year, and I thought that they did a very good job. So I'm pleased to see that they came in as the low bid.
Well, you actually, last year in your neighborhood, because of the lack of work with the pandemic, you actually had the crew that typically paves on the turnpike for Alan Myers. So that was an experience. That was an experience for them as well, to be in that, confine of a neighborhood. They're used to being out and running miles at a time.
They were very professional and they got the work done very quickly. So maybe that explains it. I don't know.
Okay, I think we're ready for Hugh. Go ahead, Hugh.
I would like to make the motion to approve Alan Myers for the contract.
Thank you, Hugh. Is there a second to Hugh's motion?
I will second it.
Thank you, Robin. Any other board comments or questions? Are there any public comments or questions on this motion?
Sean, this is Doug White. Well, it'd be nice to have Duraco, but it's good to get good feedback from Ashley for Alan Myers, and I'm sure our Public Works will be on top of him to do a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Any other public comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Ashley?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
Sean says aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Sean, before we run off, I just want to blow a little smoke in Dave's direction. Dave, I just want to do a shout out to you. I think you and your crew did a fantastic job in clearing the streets of the snow this past winter season. Hopefully we won't have to have any more this year, but you guys did a great job. I just want to tip my hat to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, John.
Everybody.
Let's carry on here with agenda item number 6, which is discussion and possible bid award for the Idlewild Stormwater Basin retrofit project. Rick?
Okay, bids were received for this project on March the 8th, 2021 at 10 a.m. The low bidder was Trio Excavating Incorporated at a bid of $145,001.95. The next closest bidder was about $5,000 higher, total site construction or total site development, and a total of 7 bids were received for the project. The low bid was substantiated by HRG, the design consultant. There were no irregularities found with the bid. It was less than the engineer's cost estimate, which was $152,860. So it is our recommendation that the Board of Supervisors award the bid to Trio Excavating in the amount of $145,001.95.
Thank you, Rick. Rick, do you know where Trio Excavating are located? Where is their place of business?
They're in Unionville.
Have you any experience of their work in this kind of project before?
None whatsoever, this project or any other. The engineer HRG did contact Trio and make sure that they fully understood the bid. They have also investigated some other projects that they've done, and they have come back with an overall good recommendation for them from other work that they've completed, but we have no personal experience with them at all.
Okay, thanks. Other board members, do you have questions for Rick about this bid award?
Yeah, I just had a question about that 10% contingency. Can you just tell me what that is, and is the actual price going to be 168?
The contingency was added to the 152,860, and that's kind of a catch-all, and it is literally a contingency. If something got missed or we find something on the project that we weren't aware of ahead of time, anytime you do a rehabilitation or a retrofit project, you often run into unforeseen situations when you start to excavate and do other work. So that contingency is kind of a fail-safe that engineering firms put into a bid estimate to cover that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I have some questions. Rick, can you give us the location of these, where these projects are going to be? I believe they're close to that residence by 951 Garlington Road. Can you tell us where they are going to be?
Sure, they're in the Idlewild development, and one of the basins is behind 951 Garlington, and the other basin is to the east of 951 Garlington, right off of Garlington Circle itself.
Okay. And what impact do you anticipate the work that needs to be done on these basins will have on the residents right there along Garlington?
During construction, it's probably going to be a little noisier than normal. There will be construction equipment and vehicles accessing the site during the construction process, but there should be no direct impact on any of the private properties. There's no work being done on any of the private properties. All of the work is being done on property owned and maintained by the homeowners association.
Okay. And what exactly is the scope of the work that they're being contracted to do? What are they going to be trying to accomplish?
Both basins are being retrofit to improve their efficiency in both water quality and rate of discharge. The basin to the east is a dry basin, and that's going to have amended soil put in the bottom to increase infiltration. It's going to have a naturalized bottom with a native plant mix there to further enhance infiltration with a more defined root structure. There's going to be a berm put into the center of the basin to increase the flow path between the inlet and the outlet. It'll actually increase that flow path by a factor of 4, roughly. The other basin to the west, behind 951 Garlington, was originally designed as a dry basin, but over time, it has developed into a wet basin. We suspect that it's either due to soil conditions because the soil didn't infiltrate. We were hoping to add infiltration to that basin, but the soils won't do it. So since it has naturally become a wet basin, we decided to go with that. And we're planting wetland plants in that basin to maintain it as a wet basin and enhance its ability to filter and treat water prior to discharge. And the emergency spillway is going to be regraded. For whatever reason, it's either was never constructed according to plan or has settled over time and is no longer according to plan dimensions. So that's going to be reconstructed. And both of the outlet structures for the basins are going to be modified to extend the detention time in each of the basins.
Okay. Since you brought up the issue, will you be inspecting the work that's being done in a timely fashion as they are proceeding through this project? Is that something that you will do?
Work will be inspected by both the township and HRG, yes.
Okay. And what's the anticipated start and end dates for this work?
We don't have a definite start date because that's dependent on the contractor. We would anticipate that the board would sign the final contract on April 20th, and we would normally give notice to proceed on the date that the contract is signed. So they could start as early as April 20th or some reasonable date after that. And we expect final to completion to be by October the 1st of 2021.
Okay. And as far as the funding for this project, is it being funded entirely by a grant from Sunoco? Is that correct?
That is correct. It's 100% funding from DEP, which resulted from fining of Sunoco for the ME2 project. So it is 100% funded, both design and construction.
Okay. And we have, I believe you mentioned that there were 215 basins in the township. 5 of them are actually owned by the township itself. The rest of them are private. How, just to try to get a better handle on this, who determines and what is the criteria to determine which basins need to be refurbished in this manner?
Well, we're required by our MS4 permit to inspect every basin in the township, whether we own it or not, at least every 5 years, which we have been doing since 2003. So we have a pretty good handle on what the condition of the basins are and how they function. So initially, township staff would determine what our priorities are, and the way we would do that is we would determine, where we need the greatest mitigation, what watersheds and what areas, and then we would look for basins in those watersheds and areas that we feel have the greatest potential for upgrading through retrofitting. Once that's done, then that decision is made, we would refer that information to DEP and request that they include it in our pollutant reduction plan or TMDL plan for retrofit. DEP has the final say on, well, let me put it this way. DEP has the final say on whether what we do counts towards our MS4 permit. We could still do the project if they denied it, but it would not count towards our PRP reduction or TMDL reduction. So that would probably be something that we would not do. If they didn't agree with our projects, we would find another project. But as far as both the PRP plans and the TMDL plans, all of the projects that were submitted to DEP were approved by DEP.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. That's all I had, John.
Thanks, John. Just to follow up on John's question there, Rick. So this particular project was one of the ones that we submitted with our permit application, and that was in our permit that was provided by DEP at the end of 2019. Is that correct, Rick?
Actually, no. This is in addition to our PRP TMDL projects that were submitted to DEP. This was a grant project, so we took the opportunity to add this project to what was already approved by DEP. But this is in a high quality, exceptional value watershed, and there's no doubt that DEP will approve this type of project. So it was chosen for that reason, and also because we have a well-established working relationship with the homeowners association, and felt that would be beneficial instead of having to deal with a homeowner that we were not familiar with.
Okay, now one other question relative to the grant funding. If we get in the field, and as you said, there are some conditions that are worthy of a change order, and the base price of $145,000 has to be increased to complete the work. Reading the note from HRG, it seems like the ME2 grant would cover up to a cost of $179,000. So if the base price was exceeded by some amount for field changes, we do have headroom within the grant approved amount to cover that. Is that correct?
Yes, we do currently have some room within the grant based on the low bid amount. But it would be good to keep in mind that if for some reason we exceed that grant amount, then that cost would need to be borne by the township. But based on the cost of the low bid plus the contingencies that have been built in, I think it would be pretty unusual to get to a point where we would exceed the grant award.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Are there any other questions from the board, or is there a board member willing to make a motion at this point?
I'll make a motion to award Trio the contract.
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, John. Any other questions or comments from the board? Are there any public comments or questions on the motion?
I think Nancy Lorback is trying to say something.
Nancy Lorback, do you have a comment you'd like to make? I'm afraid we can't hear you, Nancy, unfortunately. We're still having difficulty hearing you, Nancy. One thing you can try is just dial in on the phone and mute your computer. That sometimes helps with folks who are having difficulty accessing the GoTo meeting. Okay, seems like we can't hear Nancy. Are there any other members of the public who would like to make a comment or have a question?
Hi, it's Margie Swart, if I may.
Go ahead, Margie.
Hi, a couple of things. Has the township already received an easement agreement with the HOA?
Yes, we have.
Have you received an easement agreement with the homeowner's property that you'll need to traverse?
No, because we don't need to traverse their property. The homeowners association has property access from the street for both basins.
So, all right, I see Miss Lorback. So I've walked both the basins, and don't you have to cross over the stream or the creek to get to the one behind the home?
No.
So you'll go down the other side of the property?
That's correct.
Okay. And you're saying there's already a homeowner's easement on the other side of Miss Lorback's property?
No, it's not an easement. They own the property outright.
Okay, so you have Miss Lorback's easement and approval?
No, we do not. There is no easement on the Lorback property.
But you, okay. I've stated my objections in the past to doing this project on private property. The township has made numerous comments over the years that anything on public property or private property anything on private property, the township will not put any taxpayer money towards. And even though this is a grant fund, it's still taxpayer money once it gets into our coffers. I'm wondering why Carroll Engineering wasn't engaged to do this project, why we entered this project, I think, without a bid. According to Carroll Engineering, our appointed township engineer, their website shows that they do stormwater basin work. So I'm disappointed that we didn't go with our appointed engineer on this project. Both basins are already naturalized. They have 20 years of root growth in the basins, so seems to me not very efficient to take 20 years of natural vegetation out of the bottom of the basins to replace it with new plants that'll take 20 years to get the same root system as what's currently there. They're already naturalized.
No, they're not. They're not naturalized. The basin to the east has basically grass on the bottom, which is not providing any significant root structure. The basin behind 951 is full of scrub growth and junk that needs to be removed and planted with an appropriate wetland plant mix and plants so that a good root structure can develop. So neither basin is appropriately naturalized.
Okay. And then also just the fact that we have this approved MS4 or this PRP planned, that why we wouldn't use these grant funds on one of those projects just doesn't make sense to me. I know you're looking at enacting this stormwater fee. So any cost of stormwater projects, this could reduce the total amount needed from the taxpayers, and you missed an opportunity to do one of the improvements that's part of the plan.
Well, we didn't miss an opportunity because this project will count towards our PRP and TMDL reductions. So in fact, we may be able to remove another project from the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Nancy, are you able to dial in on the phone line? It's like Nancy's struggling to make a comment. We can, if you want, we can hold on this until we have an opportunity to hear from Nancy, since her property is affected by it.
What if we allow her to use the chat channel since she can't be heard? She could type it in.
I don't see a
She
chat.
She can chat. It depends how
Yeah.
extensive it is, whether that would be an efficient way to do it.
Yeah.
But the chat is a viable option.
Or maybe she could also email one of the supervisors and we could provide that information if we receive it from her through an email. John, do you think you might be able to do that?
Yeah, I just texted her the phone number and the access code. Hopefully she could try that, but that's not a bad idea. Can we proceed and just swing back to this as we try to get communication set up with her?
That would be my preferred approach. She should be able to use this phone line, right, Derek? We have other callers who have access just by phone, so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's, as the access code and the number is listed. So yeah, they should be.
I'd be willing to defer my motion until we hear from her.
Hey, thank you, Hugh.
Sean, may I make one last, I missed a question on my list here.
Yeah,
I got the call in, but I didn't get the access code right.
I texted you that phone number and the access code. Can you?
I have it. I'm on the website. I have it. So I'm going to try again right now.
Okay. We're going to defer to hear from you.
Or Nancy through John's video.
Yeah, we could definitely hear Nancy through John. I don't know. This might be a crazy idea, but.
Yeah, I don't know where you're coming from.
Well, while we wait for Nancy to try to dial in, Margie, you said you had one more question. Would you like to ask it now, please?
Yes, well, Mr. Craig had indicated that they do these inspections every 5 years on these basins. The inspections that were performed on these two basins, would they show that these basins were in need of retrofitting?
No, the inspections show whether the basins are well maintained or not. That's only part of the criteria for retrofitting. Most of the criteria is what is the efficiency of the basins and how they're currently functioning and how they were designed. So that's the main criteria that we use in selecting basins for retrofit. These basins have actually been relatively well maintained, but they are definitely will benefit from retrofitting as Noted.
Give Nancy one more minute here.
Hello?
Hey, Nancy, we can hear you, but you need to turn off the mic on your computer.
Oh.
Derek, can you mute Nancy?
How?
I just muted her.
Okay, Nancy, you should just be able to use your phone now. Just try speaking with your phone, and we should be good.
Okay.
Okay,
All
we can
right.
hear you.
All right. Well, what I wanted to ask about is what you were talking about. I know there is an easement on the side of my property, but there is no road. In other words, that would have to, they would have to create a road to get into the back of the property. It's an embankment. And my husband is here. So here, if you have questions, Todd.
So what I think I'm hearing Nancy asking, Rick, is the access that you're going to need to the basin behind the property, how will excavation or other equipment make its way to it without creating a road or whatever to access past this, the actual property itself?
The equipment that needs to get back to the basin to complete the work will have temporary access through that area. There will need to be some regrading done, but there's not going to be a road constructed. It'll probably be stoned temporarily to allow the construction equipment to get in there without tearing everything up. And when it's done, that stone will be taken out and the property will be restored to grass.
Nancy, were you able to hear that response?
It's a steep embankment right now. So, I mean, there's going to be heavy grading that needs to be done to do this.
There will be some temporary grading done to access the property, and they're going to have tracked equipment back there to access it, and they can do that.
Okay, well, you have answered my question. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Rick. Are there any other public questions or comments? So what do we have? We have a motion. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll continue the motion, right? Then. Correct.
So we have a motion from Hugh, and I believe we had a second. Is that correct or not?
I'll make a motion for the second.
Well, I second it, but okay.
Yeah,
So
John
Derek,
seconded.
you have it right,
John
Derek. You have
okay.
the motion second. Okay. And we've had board comments and questions. We've had public comments and questions. So we're ready for a roll call vote. So Ashley.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Hugh.
Aye.
Robin.
Aye.
Sean says aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to agenda item number 7. Discussion of plastic bag and single-use plastic ban for West Goshen Township. I believe Ashley's going to manage this topic for us.
Thank you, Sean. Good evening, everybody. First of all, I want to kind of address the agenda item. Really, I think what we're talking about tonight is just plastic bags. So that's not really including anything like utensils or anything like that tonight. So I wanted to bring this to the board's attention because there's some litigation that's happening right now with our neighbors in Westchester and in Narberth and the city of Philadelphia. Regarding the Act 23 Section 1706E of May 29th from last year that was passed by Governor Wolf, that basically states that a local government may not enact or enforce a law, rule, regulation, or ordinance that imposes a tax on or relates to the use or sale or restriction of single-use plastics. Right now, that's being challenged in court by these 3 cities. And I think it's an appropriate time to have the discussion. And I know that we've had this discussion in the past, West Goshen, you know, I feel like we're on a really great trajectory as far as sustainability is concerned. If you look at all of the things that our township and the people who volunteer their time to work in this township have done over the past year, you know, we've spent, you know, some significant money on the Cadmus report. We have created a sustainability advisory committee. We've appointed members who are very dedicated to that committee. We've installed 2 electric car chargers. And we have 2 more coming at the Luxor Apartments, thanks to negotiations on our part. We have hybrid police vehicles that are being ordered. So my point is we're moving in a really great direction as far as sustainability is concerned. Our Sustainability Advisory Committee meets monthly, and there are so many initiatives, and I think all of its members are so dedicated and so excited to pursue a lot of these initiatives. But I thought that this was a great chance to talk about the plastic bag issue because of what's happening with our neighbors, to see kind of where we stand and educate ourselves, do a little bit of research, talk to people who live in West Goshen and see what they think, kick it around a little bit. So tonight, I want to hand it over to Melanie Weil, who is currently the chair of our Sustainability Advisory Committee. And I just want to give you a little brief background here about Melanie. She is currently an assistant professor in the Department of Environmental Health at Westchester, where she teaches courses in environmental science, sustainability, environmental regulations, and global climate change. Melanie obtained her bachelor's and master's in biology from Villanova, and she earned her PhD in biology from Notre Dame. And her area of expertise is in peatland ecosystem ecology, specifically how oil sand mining operations in northern Alberta, Canada are impacting. Alex, please. Sorry, everyone, my kids are talking. She was a researcher at Princeton and the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia and Villanova. And like I said, she currently chairs our Sustainability Advisory Committee. So she has a presentation for us tonight. Please help me welcome Melanie.
Thank you, Ashley. Welcome, Melanie. Derek, are you able to allow screen sharing? Melanie, you want to share your screen, I presume?
Yes, please. Thank you, Ashley, for that introduction, and thank you to the board for the invitation to speak here this evening. I have about a 10-minute presentation, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but I'm excited to, and actually, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm pretty passionate about plastics and specifically single-use bags. I've worked in the past to help have them banned in coastal communities in New Jersey, and I'm excited to be part of this initiative as part of the West Goshen Sustainability Advisory Committee. So I'm assuming I'm very efficient in Zoom. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Alrighty, so I thought I would stick to this this outline. Again, it's about a 10-minute presentation, and I thought I would discuss what is the problem with plastic bags, how they're made, why an education campaign isn't always enough to get bans in place or change, community behavior, plastic bag recycling, and why paper bags aren't targeted more. And then I'll end up with whether such an ordinance, if it were to be passed, would hurt consumers and businesses, and then look what other municipalities have done. Okay, so what is the problem with plastic bags? We know that they're a source of pollution in their environment. I was walking down New Street just a few days ago, and on my way back, I picked up a part of a refrigerator drawer, plastic bags, and a plastic, I guess it's like a delineator that you put on the side of the road so that I guess plows can not drive over grass and aim for your driveway and such. And this is a problem not only in Westchester, in West Goshen, which is a pretty wealthy township, it happens all over the globe. And as Ashley provided pictures earlier, they are really damaging to marine life and shorebirds, but they also clog storm drains and gum up recycling machinery, which is why most plastic bags are not recyclable. Okay, so many of you probably know this, but it wasn't until the mid-19th century that plastic bags and other single-use plastics were generated. There's the classic phrase from The Graduate when he's pulled aside and he's told one word, and that word is plastics. And it wasn't until about the 1970s that their popularity skyrocketed. But plastics, and single-use plastics are no exception, are made from fossil fuels. So in addition to decreasing pollution related to plastic bags, we would also be reducing our global carbon footprint by quite a bit with removal of these items from the environment. Okay, plastic bags generally have an average lifetime use of 12 minutes, but they can live for a really long time, from anywhere from 10 to 1,000 years. And that's because they don't biodegrade, meaning they don't break down into biological compounds. They're difficult to recycle, which again, I just mentioned a few minutes ago that they're often left out of recycling campaigns because they tend to get stuck in the machinery and they clog equipment. And essentially, they just don't really break down. They just break up. And so when they're exposed to sunlight and heat, they break down into smaller and smaller pieces until you get into a certain diameter, and they're microplastics, which you can see here. And so part of the reason why every plastic that's ever been made still exists is because they don't go away. And so when we think about recycling and biodegradation or decomposition, you might hear those words associated with plastic, and it's just not true. They don't go away, they just get smaller and smaller. And so there's plastic in probably all of us. They've measured these microplastics in places like the Mariana Trench, which is like the deepest point in the ocean, and on Mount Everest. So these plastics, these microplastics, are ubiquitous and they're everywhere. Okay, so why isn't an education campaign enough to get the point across? Well, oftentimes, and we know this, that we're creatures of habit, right? But we also know that we have to accept imposed regulations at times, right? So some examples, pets. We know that we have to clean up after our pets when we take them for walks. We also know that seatbelts are required, right? And if you get caught without using your seatbelt, it's against the law. And similarly, recycling, right? We know that it's the law to recycle objects, not just plastics, but a variety of different objects, as you can see here, electronics and such. And so a plastic bag ban is quite similar, right? It's voluntary compliance is not sufficient to change behaviors at times. And so a plastic bag ban would result in, an imposed regulation, but as has been shown with all of these other regulations, the community eventually comes to accept it. Okay, so what about recycling? You see these recycling plastic bag containers in grocery stores and other places. And I think, and actually I know from talking to people that those people that use plastic bags feel okay about it because they think that they're recycled. And while these containers exist and they are taken off to be recycled, the truth of the matter is only 1 to 5%, depending on what cities and states and countries that you look at, are truly recycled. And the reason for that is that it is so cheap to produce the plastic bags, it's just not cost effective to recycle them. So most often they end up in a landfill. So the other keeps coming back to this point that plastic bags contaminate curbside recycling, which is oftentimes why they're not included in the recycling package, which is true for West Goshen and many other municipalities. Okay, so what about paper bags? It is true that paper bags are biodegradable, so that's great. They are more easily recycled. And in general, they're much better for the environment. But we wish to reduce dependence on all kinds of single-use bags, and so paper bags would be part of that. Paper bags, of course, are more expensive than plastic bags, and while grocery stores have them on hand for those that ask, they tend to put them underneath where you can't really see them, and the plastic is readily available. Okay, so would such an ordinance hurt consumers? It's true that there's a small cost associated with, purchasing these reusable bags, and some of them are also made out of plastic, but it's a very different width of plastic and it's different polymers. So those, even though they're plastic, wouldn't be part of a potential ban. But these bags don't cost very much, anywhere from $1 to under $10. But the greatest concern that we have as part of the Sustainability Advisory Committee is that we worry that it would hurt the poor and those who are already food insecure. There are people, especially with COVID, who are struggling to pay for food, and the last thing we would want to do is to pose a single-use plastic bag ban. But there are ways around that we can talk about at some later time. Here's an example in the city of Guelph. They had a reusable bag drive that they put in place. We could do something similar in West Goshen Township. We could have Earth Day events where we collect plastic bags from the community and give those out. I'm part of Westchester University, and I could come up with some events that we could host bag bans, or sorry, bag drives. Okay, so will the ban hurt businesses? There's lots of information out there, and of course, depending on what source you look at, if it's pro-plastic or pro-environment, you'll find a lot of information out there, and some of it's true and some of it isn't, and so it's difficult to sort through. But in the research that I've done over the past 5 years or so, plastic bags aren't free. So, retailers have to pay for these bags and they put the cost onto consumers, right? So they don't absorb that externality, the consumers pay. And so much that the plastic bag industry makes a profit, $4 billion per year in profits from US retailers. And I can give you all of the sources of information that I'm showing you tonight. But again, most of the plastic bags end up in a landfill, and businesses have to pay to have those plastic bags taken to the landfill. More than 80% of the plastic bags that you find, even in recycle bins, end up in the landfill. And I would like to point out that no business has ever failed because of a bag law, so that's encouraging. I wanted to also just briefly introduce fees or taxes or credits. This was a study that was done in 2019, and they looked at cities all over the world, everywhere from Beijing to Bangladesh to Chicago and the state of Maryland. And what they found was when they looked at the percentage of customers using plastic bags before in blue and after in orange, where there was a fee or a tax imposed on single-use plastics. They found that once the fee or tax was imposed, that the reduction was 42% of customers that used plastic bags. So this is retailers that will provide plastic bags, but they charge a fee. And then if we look at in this same study, instead of a fee or tax, we have here on the right a credit. And so before, you have 84% of customers using plastic bags, and even though they were receiving a credit of 5 cents or 10 cents, the reduction was only 2%. So what this study, and there have been many others out there as well, demonstrates that a credit is not as successful in reducing plastic bag usage amongst customers, whereas if you place a fee or a tax, it is. Okay, so what have other municipalities done? As Ashley mentioned, the Westchester Borough has implemented, well, they passed a resolution, an ordinance, and it hasn't gone into effect yet. But there have been countries, states, and cities all around the world that have done this. And in the borough, there are retailers that are all for this, and they get recognition. And in general, if you poll the community, most people are for a plastic bag ban, or at least just recognizing that there should be a reduction in plastic usage. And also, as Ashley said, that Narberth, who was the first to ban plastic or to provide legislation, Lower Merion as well, and the Westchester Borough, and this was published just a few weeks ago. And Ashley mentioned at the beginning Act 23 and how that impacts this potential ban. Okay, so what do plastic bans achieve? Oops, my animation did not behave. As I said, it reduces pollution, it reduces our reliance on fossil fuels, because you have to use fossil fuels to make these plastics, and that contributes to climate change. But it also has cultural impacts, right? Retailers are essentially forced to come up with more creative and sustainable solutions. As soon as the first plastic straw ban went into effect, there were companies out there designing compostable straws. I mean, the first set of those dissolved in your mouth as you were sipping, so not the best, but with innovation, we've come a really long way, and now there are straws made out of corn and other biodegradable products. And it also, produces a change in behavior. If, just like with seatbelts, if you're forced to suddenly you have to wear seatbelts, then that changes behavior. And ultimately, I think it's simply the right thing to do when we look at plastics as a whole and the impact that it has on nearly every facet of our planet. And that's all I have. So we'll figure out how to stop sharing, which I'm always a little rusty on.
Thank you so much, Melanie.
Can I ask some questions?
Absolutely.
To Melanie, do we have time?
Yes, we're
Okay.
opening it up to questions. Go ahead, Robin.
All right, thank you. So I was a early changeover to getting rid of plastic bags. I really have almost a personality problem dealing with people who I see have double bagged, triple bagged plastic bags for 3 items coming out of the grocery stores. And I know that it's probably a hard push to get people to focus on this, But I keep thinking about the fact that the $1 for the bag, that is that bag that allows you to have as much, you can fill in the grocery bag, is so much more effective and can be reused. I've heard about other organizations, say for example, the different cupboards and places where people can go to get food. And that one of the initiatives that they had is that they asked everybody who was donating money or food to bring as many of those bags so that more people could use them as opposed to using just a simple plastic bag. And I do think that there is a fair amount of understanding that these aren't great, but there isn't enough feedback coming back to people for them to really understand the impact that it's having. And just, we're about to have a creek cleanup in April, and it's right behind the McDonald's. And every time we go there, there are remnants of tiny pieces of plastic blowing in the wind, getting dropped on by people walking through it, and it's ending up in the creek, and it's affecting our environment. But I think it's a difficult thing to get people on board, and maybe putting together some level of connecting with some of those organizations that would, give people maybe something as an incentive to change their ways when they're going to those food cupboards. And that's just one example. It's just what happened for one of my daughters in terms of how she was working with this third party group. So everybody should be responsible for the pollution that we're leaving on the street. I remember, when we were kids, we would see the Native American who was crying because we had polluted his land. We need to take some of these issues seriously and maybe find ways to have, for example, and Ashley, I'm sure you've thought about this already, to maybe start having some initial short discussions about this initiative that could go into the monthly monthly newsletter, just to keep sort of doing a little drip of information over and over again and expanding upon that as you get closer and closer to maybe something else you want to talk about. I find that when you can give people little nuggets to think about, they typically will keep thinking about it. So it's just something I'm thinking about in terms of similar to what we need to do for stormwater, to start informing the township about, stormwater and what it could cost us. But if we can start with something little and the township get behind it, I think we could be successful, at least getting some of this addressed.
Okay, thank you, Robin.
Actually, I have a couple of questions for Melanie. Melanie, the places that have enacted a ban on the single-use plastic bags, what is the solution that customers come up with in general? Is it to swap to paper bags? Is it a combination of that plus folks bringing their own reusable bags? What is the kind of solutions that, a year after implementation of a ban, that is the steady state for the new world?
That's a really good question, Sean, and it varies depending on where you look. So there's a mix of course, there's a period of time where you phase out, right? So these retailers buy reams of these plastic bags, and so there would be a certain amount of time for them to be able to use those plastic bags. But then some retailers will charge, so in that interim, they will charge a tax. So if it's 5 cents, 2.5 cents stays with the retailer, and the other 2.5 cents goes to the township for sustainability initiatives. Some are rather, what's the word I'm looking for? Quick to act and very matter of fact, no plastic, no paper, you don't bring a bag, then that need to figure that out. And I see that more common in coastal communities where they're by the ocean, and these plastics end up in the ocean because of the proximity. But there are different models that different cities and municipalities follow. I read in Boston that for a short time, they provided reusable bags for free so that, everyone that shopped there would, build up a few reusable bags so that they weren't just left out in the cold and having to pay the price themselves. And so, of course, that works both ways, because if you have a grocery store that suddenly shuts down plastic bags, then maybe those customers will go to another grocery store. They'll go to Acme if it's close by. And so oftentimes, so then, like Giant would lose, let's just use Giant as an example, they would lose customers. So what they do is they provide the bags for free so that they don't lose their customers. Or, if they're in close enough proximity, Giant talks to Acme, and then there's a ban for both. So it just depends on where you look. And some cities like Boston has been doing this since 2016 or 17, and they've evolved in how they've structured the phase out and ban in general.
Okay, and then so in terms of our local community, to me, the grocery stores actually might be the easiest nut to crack, because most people have a planned trip there. They're buying groceries for a week. They're going to have these reusable bags. If you forget the reusable bags, then maybe the grocery stores could loan them, like you said, or even, for $1, you take the bag for $1 and bring it back next week, and we'll credit you the $1 to get it back. So there's ways I see the grocery stores being able to manage a transition fairly easily. The biggest concern I have is places like Wawa, where this throwaway culture that we have is really ingrained. So people rush in there, they buy 3 items, they throw it in a plastic bag, they eat the thing in the truck or whatever, the bag's thrown in the back of the truck and it blows out on the street, because I see a lot of Wawa bags around where I live. So have you talked to Wawa about what they can do to help with this initiative? Have we tried any outreach as part of our initial exploration yet, or is that to come?
The short answer is no. It is to come, but we thought we would target grocery stores first. But I will say that I worked very closely with Wawa in Avalon and Stone Harbor, New Jersey, but it was easier there because it's such a small community. So the ban went into effect for all retailers, including Wawa, and it was much easier to do there. Yeah, Wawa, I can't really, we haven't really talked about it, and that's going to take some effort to figure out an implementation plan for Wawa. But yeah, they probably have more plastic bags than all the grocery stores combined.
Yeah.
If I could just interject really fast, Sean, too, is that I think the beauty, in my words, the beauty of a plastic bag ban is that it really is a ban on all retailers. Now, there are people, there are places that haven't done it exactly that way. For example, the entire state of Delaware, as of, I think, January 1st of this year, enacted a plastic bag ban in the entire state. But they have some different rules. I think I've told you this before. They have actually like a minimum square footage that you have to meet in order to be banned from, so like it's all their big stores, like their grocery stores and the Walmarts and all that stuff. And so that's what they've decided to do. Like I said earlier, I feel lucky that we have neighbors like Westchester and like Narberth, and we have a really great big city near us that is willing to put this issue out there and really take this to the state. And and so for us, we get to sort of sit by and watch, see how this plays out for now. which is, I think, the course of action that is probably the wisest at this juncture, because this is going to move quickly. So on the one hand, we have Act 23 that says by July 1st, 2021, this ban that Governor Wolf put in place will no longer be valid, except for if the emergency disaster declaration is still in place, which it is, until 6 months after that. So it really isn't going to be July. But I think that there's a lot of confidence that this litigation is going to play out in the favor of the plaintiffs in this case. And so I think it's wise and prudent for us to start the process of the outreach and, like Robin said, kind of putting this in our newsletters and talking to the community about it and getting people ready for it. And that might take a year, but we do have the time right now with this litigation happening to explore it. And so, I think the Sustainability Committee is really hoping that we can at least make this somewhat of a priority and get it out there and have the conversation. And I think tonight was kind of the kickoff of that for us.
That's great. So are the board members, John or Hugh, that we haven't heard from yet? Any comments, questions?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question. Melanie, to every change, there's a collateral effect. What effect would a plastic bag ban have upon jobs, both pro and con?
That's a good question, John. And of course, there is a rather sizable percentage of the community that's employed in the plastic bag industry. So, of course, it would have an impact. But, I argue that, the coal mining industry also had an impact with jobs. And the idea of coal ever being, a mainstream fossil fuel in the future is very unlikely. So, take those workers in the coal industry, retrain them in the renewable sector, and then they're employed again. So I feel like the same thing could be done with the plastic bag industry. So retrain them in some other aspect that's, similar job skill and put them back into the workforce rather than, come at it from the point of view that they will lose their job. They don't have to lose their job. They would just be retrained into a different sector.
So you feel that job training and all that needs to be an essential component to this move?
Yes.
Okay.
China has done this with the coal industry. They took all of their, not all, but a good chunk of their coal workers because they're trying to phase out of coal, and they retrain them to have jobs in the renewable sector, and it's working.
Which is what we should have been doing 20 years ago.
Exactly.
I just say that out loud. More like 30 years ago.
Got other questions, John or Hugh?
No.
Ashley, should we open this up for public comment at this point?
Yes, please.
Can I just make one more statement? I go to the CVS that's at 5 Points Road and Westchester Pike. And I just looked this up because I wanted to make sure I was accurate about it. But CVS has this investment. The first time I went there and found out that if I wanted to get a bag, I had to pay 5 cents to get the bag, which I didn't take ever. I never take the bag. But what I was thinking about is that this might be an interesting place for me to start having some conversations to understand what they're doing, because I think this would be very helpful, because they too have this issue where people grab a bag and they put a bunch of stuff in it and throw it away as soon as they get back to their house, because all they needed it for was to carry it. But I was happy to see that CVS is already involving itself in this initiative. Maybe something to think about for the committee to sit down and talk with people if you want to have an extension of. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will also add that most most of the grocery stores and places like Target, they do give credits, but as I showed you in that graphic, credits don't seem to have as big of an impact as a tax or a fee.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions from the public this evening for Melanie or Ashley, or yes, members of our SAC? Okay, I'm not hearing any questions. So Melanie, that was great. I found it pretty informative. Thank you. And good conversation. Thank you, Ashley, for bringing it to the board tonight. And I think I had a couple of takeaways there. One was to think about how the SAC can continue to explore through outreach to the various companies, whether it's CVS or Wawa or the grocery stores, etc. You know, what solutions they have in mind or are thinking about. I'm sure it's somewhere on their radar screen, if not locally, maybe in their corporate departments. And then also what we can do with our township newsletter to have appropriate articles to start making this visible and something that the residents of the township can be made much more aware of. Is that what I heard tonight in terms of takeaways?
I think so. Ashley?
Yes. Yes. I think this is just the beginning. I think it's important to educate ourselves and for the residents of West Goshen to explore the idea that we may end up taking this road. But I believe that we have the power as a board to actually enact legislation that will make a difference. So it takes 3 votes, you know, eventually, not now, but down the road.
Very good. Well, thank you, Melanie, again. I really enjoyed the presentation. It was succinct and to the point. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me again.
Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 8, discussion and possible approval of Resolution 7-2021, documents destruction for the Township Codes Department. Mr. Bill Webb.
Hi, Sean. How are you tonight?
Good, thank you.
So we are in a dire need to remove some documents from our storage closet. We are in need of space. All residential documents prior to 2008 have already been disposed of in accordance with the PHMC's requirements. But we have not done this since I've been here 7 years. And I think Derek could concur the same, would be an agreement on that. So what you have before you tonight is just to dispose of building permits, all permits from 2008 up until 2015 to be disposed of in accordance with PHMC's disposition of records law.
Bill, so we only need to retain the last 5 years, it looks like, in terms of requirements. Is that correct?
Correct. We have to retain the last 5 years, or if a permit had not received a certificate of occupancy, then we have to retain it 5 years after that occupancy permit has been issued. But all the records that we're looking to dispose of, the certificates of occupancies have all been well issued.
Okay. Other questions from board members for Bill?
Yes, Bill, just one question. I noticed they're all residential only, no commercial?
No, by law, by Pennsylvania law, and by the UCC, the Uniform Construction Codes requirements, all commercial permits must be kept for a property as long as that property is still standing. Upon demolition, then you could dissolve those records. But as long as those buildings are still in place and being operated in, those records must be retained. And use and occupancy permits, whether commercial or residential, must be retained. That is why they're not on the list.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I'll make the that we adopt the resolution to dispose of them.
That's right.
We have a motion from Hugh to adopt the resolution to dispose of these records. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you, Ashley. Any other board questions or comments? Are there any questions or comments from the public?
Hi, Sean, it's Margie Swart.
Go ahead, Margie.
Hi, I copied the board in on a right to know request that was filed on behalf of our homeowners association, asking for all permit file contents to be released to us before the homeowners association, that is, before the township disposes of them. So I just want to make sure that that is going to happen.
So Derek and Bill, if you have that right to know request, Casey's not here tonight.
Excuse me, all links, property information on the code side is being combed through and put aside as we speak. I believe Bill responded in an email later in the day. And the only thing I would add to that is there are certain pieces of information that are not right to know pieces of information. So, but we are putting all the links information we have, regardless if it's RTK or not, aside for Casey to review upon his return. So absolutely, it's being put aside, and the RTK officer, when he comes back, will review it and respond.
Yeah,
Thank you, Derek.
to concur with Derek, I did send Ms. Swart and Ms. Davis an email late this afternoon explaining that we have set aside the links records and that records by section 708 of the open records law are not even subject to right to know requests because they're copyrighted material or from the professionals such as an architect, and those people own that. It's their property. And if an individual wanted to seek those records, they would need to get them directly from the person who produced that, because we as a township don't own that, and it's not a public record. And I did speak with the Open Records Office this afternoon to confirm that, because I knew that it would probably be a question tonight, and the Open Records Office did confirm that, and also advised that we set records aside that were subject to a right to know request at the last minute before disposition was going to take place, which we did.
Okay,
thank
I
you.
had somebody reached out to the Open Records Office on our behalf as well and was given conflicting information there. But I'm curious, when you say the plans aren't public record, those are you talking about the subdivision plans?
The subdivision plans are a complete separate entity. That subdivision plan has nothing to do with this. The subdivision plan is actually recorded with the county. The records that we would be getting rid of are any plans associated with the construction, which again, by section 708, I believe it's 708(3) of the open records law, it specifically exempts plans being a public record.
Yeah, obviously I'm going to object to that. So just as long as you hold on to those, I saw Ms. Camp on. Could you clarify things for us, Ms. Camp?
I will say that my contact is the person who runs the Open Records Office. So I would think that I got it from a pretty valuable source.
Okay, so you would dispose of them but not release them. You would throw them away or shred them, whatever you do to them, but you would not give them to us as the homeowner who paid money for these homes.
We're not legally.
I want to. Can I just step in here? I want to reiterate: we are not throwing anything away at this juncture. Everything's going to go through the right to know officer. So we are retaining all the information we have on the links. So whatever we have will be retained by us in order to give to the right to know officer. We are simply setting expectations as to what we believe the law says and what conversations Bill had with the right to know office, so that if the right to know officer, AKA Casey, comes to the same conclusion, we would just want you to have the same expectations of what the information was that we were given by the right to know office. If you personally object to that, that's, you know, your prerogative, but we will be retaining the information for Casey to peruse and come to his conclusions as the right to know officer.
Okay, I just would like to comment, just 2 weeks ago, I sat in on the sewer authority meeting, and I did bring into question some of the inspections that were done on some of the units here. And I think is it just coincidental that now 2 weeks later, these are up for disposition or to destroy?
We had no, first of all, we've been talking about this for months and months and months. I have no information regarding what was talked about at sewer. I didn't talk to anybody regarding the sewer. So I can assure you that space in the office has been the primary concern and the driver in this. And again, it hasn't been done since I've been here, and we are in dire need of some shelf space. And to Bill's point, we can't get rid of commercial. So residential, per the PHMC law, is where we need to go next.
Okay. So I do see 2 lawyers online, so I just respectfully ask that all those files are retained for now until we can sort this out. But please don't destroy them. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Are there any other public comments or questions? Okay, we've had a motion from Hugh and a second from Ashley. I'd like to take a roll call vote. Ashley?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
Sean says aye.
Excuse me, Sean, may I just make sure that motion notates all but the links?
Yes, so noted that the motion is to dispose of records per the resolution with retention of linked records until disposition is determined by the right to know request.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 9, discussion and possible approval of resolution 8, 2021, establishing April 2021 as Pennsylvania Safe Digging Month. Dave Woodward.
Sean, this is just a PA one call asked to do this every year. It's just to make people aware to call one call before they dig.
The standard resolution is no change from this year from last year, Dave?
No, we actually get it from one call and just forward it on.
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion there, Sean.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Hugh.
Second by Hugh.
Thank you, Hugh. Is there any other board questions or comments? Is there any public comment or questions? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Ashley?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
Sean? Aye. Thank you. Moving on to item number 10. Discussion and possible approval of resolution 9, 2021, establishing no left turns from the Henderson High School parking lot onto Lincoln Avenue. Rick.
This is a request from our traffic safety unit in the police department. I'm not aware of exactly what the reason for it is, but I would assume it's to keep the traffic exiting the parking lots from going back in front of the high school and creating a hazard with pedestrian crossings.
Chief Carroll, do you have any other comments for this request?
I can say from past experience, especially when the kids are going from school, the traffic on Montgomery Avenue is an issue. And when we get cars waiting to turn left, it backs up one lane for quite a distance.
Just trying to look at my Google Maps to make sure I knew exactly which intersection this was.
Yeah, I wonder if you could clarify that, either Rick or Chief Carroll, which parking lot are we talking about going out into Lincoln?
I believe it's the only parking lot going out onto Lincoln.
The parking lot near the tennis courts coming onto Lincoln. If the kids turn left, they go right to Montgomery Avenue where all the traffic is. And if we prevent the left turns and force them up towards Garfield, it alleviates that traffic.
Gotcha.
It also actually restricts the left turns out of the parking lot as well, because it's a single lane exit. So the left turns would cue the traffic in the parking lot as well as on Lincoln Avenue.
Okay, I see it. So student parking turning left to come up past the tennis courts would be the no left turn, and they would be forced to go right towards Garfield. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah, okay. Are there any other board questions or comments about the proposed resolution? Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
I'll make the motion to adopt it. Go ahead, Gagny. Gagne. I'm sorry, Ashley, your turn.
Go ahead, Ashley.
I'll make the motion. Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Hugh. So I have a motion and a second. Are there any other board questions or comments? Are there any public questions or comments? Hearing none, we're ready to take
I'm sorry.
Ahead.
How is this information? Yes. Chief, how is this information going to be presented to Henderson, and what will that look like in terms of how they're communicating to people who might not recognize what they need to be doing appropriately now going forward?
I believe there's been a no left turn sign at the exit, excuse me, to that parking lot for some time. And I know it alleviated traffic when they first put it up. I'm not sure why the resolution is occurring at this time.
The reason is that although the sign was erected probably by the school district, there is no way to legally enforce it without a resolution and an ordinance in the township code. So I believe it's an enforcement issue as to why it needs to go in at this point.
And also to clarify, this is a resolution.
Thanks, Chief.
It's not an ordinance. Is this going to be included at the end of the year with all the other resolutions regarding traffic signage?
Yes, that's the way we handle traffic sign ordinances. A number of them occur during the year, some years more than others, but we do a resolution to allow enforcement, and then at the end of the year, the solicitor puts all of those resolutions into an ordinance, and it becomes part of our written code of ordinances.
Okay.
Are there any public comments? Okay, then we're ready for a roll call vote. Ashley?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
You?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
Sean? Aye. Thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda is number 11, discussion and possible approval of Resolution 10 for 2021, extending outdoor dining for West Goshen Township restaurants. Bill Webb.
Thank you, Sean. So as we all remember, we passed this back in March of 2020, almost a year ago. It wasn't March, I'm sorry. Pandemic's got me all messed up. We passed this back closer to the summer of 2020, when we had an understanding that the governor was going to relax dining requirements that allowed for restaurants to do some outdoor dining and gathering. And we wanted to be proactive with our restaurant community and help them as much as we could do so by passing this resolution to ease the restrictions for their dining capacities at their facilities. Now that resolution has since expired. So this resolution will renew that resolution. And further, I added some additional language that actually will allow us to keep up with the change in whatever the Commonwealth does when the governor makes changes to his provisions for outdoor dining or restaurants in general. And I see that we've already are going to see a change effective April 4th, where restaurants will be able to go back to 75% of the indoor capacity. And that language that I added will allow us to say, okay, well, you're allowed to have 75% of your indoor capacity, which means you can add that remaining 25% to the exterior of your property. Because the key is we don't want to throw their parking balance off, which is the biggest concern, or exceed their occupancy limit that they're allowed for their building. So that's pretty much the gist of this. We've extended it for a long period of time so we don't have to revisit this. But once the state goes back to 100%, this would go away, and restaurants would have to go back to the regular zoning requirements.
Thank you, Bill. Other questions or comments from board members?
Just so I'm clear, the thing parallels the state requirements, right, Bill?
Correct.
And it's actually less restrictive, is it?
No, we're not less.
Certain areas?
No, we're not less restrictive than the Commonwealth. We can't do that. What this resolution is doing is allowing our restaurants, because under the ordinance now, most restaurants can't have outdoor dining in their parking area.
Okay.
I got you. Okay. Outdoor dining in the park.
I got it.
With restrictions.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it lightens our load. Okay, I got it.
Bill, I guess one question I have it's a question and a concern is, I know we're trying to be helpful here and have this resolution, run through the likely period of any restriction. I see a date here of November 15th, 2021. A concern I might have is if things really do return very much to normal here in the summer months, and we get a situation where a lot of people are out and about dining, and the facilities are full inside, and restaurants, by the nature of business, want to accommodate people, and they continue with this ability to have outdoor dining. I'm just worried that we might start to see more near misses potentially with the amount of traffic that's going to be around, the amount of people in the summer months. I just wonder whether it'd be more prudent to not have as long a period here and revisit this really in 3 months' time and just see where we are and decide whether we want to continue to extend it or not.
Sure, and I would tend to agree with you on that. And the date is certainly a policy decision. Kristen and I discussed this along with Derek and Case, and we just wanted to extend it out further so that we were not revisiting this within a short period. Because every time we do this, we have to advertise and whatnot. And this
Sean,
is just
it was totally a decision I threw in there because I thought that gets you through the months. That was sort of in line with what the borough of Westchester did for their outdoor dining on Gay Street. But absolutely, if you'd like to shorten it up because the COVID situation is forever evolving, that's absolutely your discretion.
So other board members, what are your thoughts?
My inclination, Sean, is to leave the extended date in there just like they originally thought.
Thank you, Hugh. Others?
Well,
yeah, I think to leave it out there, I think it'd be worthwhile to keep it out there. My guess would be that if they were going to do still a lot of outdoor dining in the middle of November, it probably would limit people from being outside. One thing I was wondering about is whether or not we have the ability to evaluate whether or not, and I'm sure we won't be able to do it, but you think about all that parking space that's outside of the old Kmart area. I was thinking about if we've always talked about that being like the center of town, but it really isn't. But what if we were to help or expect that some of those organizations could utilize some of that tarmac so that they could have these events without and being able to be more socially distanced? I think we talked about this last time about the Acme parking lot where there was the pizza place, and that was the one place where I think they were concerned about people eating so close to the sidewalk. To me, it still seems a little bit unsafe to have people be on sidewalks, especially in that community, in that area. And the only other place that I think could maybe do that would be maybe the Giant, but that's not in our purview. So I think we have some time to think through it, what we might want to do, and maybe we'll get some feedback from the owners of those businesses, what that might look for them, and see how they feel about it.
Bill, which establishments are taking advantage of this right now, and which would likely to continue to want to utilize outside dining over the next few summer months, spring and summer?
Sure. So actually, I whipped this up last week because I actually received 3 calls on the same day from Fiorillo's Cafe, Pika's, and Applebee's, all wanting to go back to outdoor dining.
There's nothing that says you can't rescind it either. So you could keep November 15th, and then if things go haywire and you see adverse consequences you didn't think about, you can always rescind it.
So, Bill, the onus would be on you in that scenario where, as we heat up in the spring and summer, we've got excessive, maybe restaurants are back to 100% indoor capacity, and they've got outdoor capacity that's approved by this, and we'd be relying on you to take a look and make sure you're not starting to see potential situations that could be, a safety risk. Do you feel comfortable with that, or?
Well, I added language to this new resolution that actually cures that issue, because as the state increases capacity for the indoor, they lose their right to have outdoor capacity.
Could you tell me which sentence or clause is related to that?
I think it's the very last one. I think it's number 8.
Yes, I see that.
My computer froze up on me.
You see it, Sean?
Yeah, I see it. So again, Bill, the onus would be on us to make sure that was being adhered to. So it would be on you to make sure that Applebee's and Pika's, et cetera, are following the changing requirements as COVID evolves.
Absolutely.
I think it's going to be an enforcement issue no matter what the piece of paper that you guys vote on says, Sean. I mean, regardless of what we pass, and I think it's going to be, some people trying to not go to as quickly back to normal as we would want them to, and to try to milk that for all it's worth. So Bill would probably agree with me. I think it's going to be an enforcement issue, starting whenever it's back to 100% capacity and on.
Okay.
And with respect to the way the businesses handled themselves last year, we had 0 issues. They all followed our guidelines. They didn't go over any more than they were allowed. Our business community was great because they were very appreciative that we were looking out for their interest as well. And I understand there could be some enforcement action down the road against the business who says, you know what, I'm not going back. I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to keep my indoor. Okay. And then we'll do zoning enforcement under the ordinance.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you. I think my concern was satisfied by clause number 8. Do we have a motion to adopt this resolution number 10 of 2021?
Yes, you do.
Thank you, Hugh. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Robin. Is there any other board questions or comments? Are there any public comments or questions about this resolution? Hearing none, we're ready to take a roll call vote. Ashley?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
You?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
Sean says aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 12 are the reports for the month of February 2021, and we start with the police report from Chief Mike Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Report from the Police Department for February 2021. Our officers responded to 1,729 calls for service. 39 were alarms, and 4 of those 39 alarms were valid alarms. We responded to 20 reportable accidents and 31 non-reportable accidents. We drove a total of 15,687 miles. We conducted specific traffic enforcement on 9 different locations: Mackenzie Drive, North New Street, Snyder Avenue, West Warren Road, Norfolk Avenue, East Rhodes Avenue, Montgomery Avenue, South Five Points Road, and McElroy Drive. In the area of career development, our officers continue their Lexapol daily training bulletins. Some of our officers conducted their yearly recertifications. All of our ERT and negotiators attended their monthly trainings. Lieutenant DiMedio and Sergeant Liss attended the FBI Executive Leadership Institute. And Officer May went through field officer training. That's the report from the police department. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
What's the name of the May baby?
Sydney.
Chief.
Sydney.
Sydney. Okay, I've been waiting to find out what the baby's name was. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a quick question just to ask about the assist to and the assist from. I don't think I've ever paid much attention to this section. Somebody went to New York City, Euclid, Newark. Obviously, I assume that most of these communities probably have reciprocity in terms of you helping them when they need help, and then they come help us, correct?
So most of those weren't actually a response to those locations when they're out of the jurisdiction or out of the county. Most of those would be calls, requests for assistance via telephone or computer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just sad about the found dog.
Yeah.
In Upper Providence. He was found.
Would you rather he still be lost, Robin?
No, I wanted to make sure he came home okay. You got to drive like in the back seat of a police vehicle, wagging his tail. That's what I imagined.
I probably enjoyed it. Any other questions for the chief from the board?
Yeah, I have some questions. Chief Carroll, on the false alarms there, I noticed some of these entries there have asterisks next to them. What does that signify? Like, for example, NB Homes has 4 asterisks next to it. The date the false alarm was received, or the alarm was received, was on February the 1st.
Let me get to my alarm page.
And I know from prior reports, NB Homes has been a frequent recipient of police department services.
Sure, we've with all the homes they're building up there, they certainly get some of our attention. I don't know what the asterisk means, except for possibly like there's one on McDonald's, because we have more than one McDonald's, and obviously NB Homes has many addresses up there, but they own them all right now, so perhaps that indicates that it's more than one address under that same username. But I can find out for you.
Okay. Also, the number of alarms this month were 39 compared to, I believe there was 50 last month, something like that. Anyway, are you finding that the fee structure that is put in place for responding to false alarms is sufficient to be changing folks' behavior to fix a false alarm condition, whether it be a faulty alarm or somebody not setting the alarm correctly, or whatever the case may be? Are you finding that that the fee structure is sufficient to change the reasons why people would be issuing false alarms?
I think it certainly curbs some of the behavior, and I think the danger of increasing it too much would be the residents maybe that would be more impacted by a higher fee will be more reluctant to use their alarm, as opposed to maybe someone who can afford it and isn't impacted, has more alarms, but it would affect everyone, not necessarily equally.
Right. So there's a matter of getting that balance.
Correct.
Okay. Do you find that the false alarms are trending down, or are they remaining the same, or are they getting worse? Is there any?
I think they fluctuate. I think more people have alarms now than they did 15 years ago. So certainly the false alarms go up, but I don't think it's overburdensome on us as a department.
Okay. What's the criteria for determining a quote-unquote selective enforcement area? What exactly does that mean, and what does that entail?
Our traffic unit is tasked with finding 2 places where they receive complaints about traffic, or a high accident location, a high speed location, 2 locations every 2 weeks to give to our patrol officers to focus their traffic attention to. And that's separate from the work that the traffic division does on specific locations throughout the township.
Okay. Also, on the, I guess you could also tell us about what's going on with the ambulance or calls. There was, on 4 occasions, there were 7 ambulance calls to the golf court apartments, but that just comes with an address, not with a apartment number. Do you happen to know if that was a specific location of one apartment, or was it a variety of apartments? Just
from going through the reports, it's a variety of different locations. Just the way that information prints out, it doesn't show you the apartment number, but it is a variety of locations in there.
Okay, it seemed like an abnormal. I don't recall, not that I checked, all of the monthly reports in the past year or anything like that, but I don't recall golf court apartments having that number of ambulance calls. It seemed somewhat odd. Actually, we had a meeting with Chief Keller before this meeting tonight. Do you want to report on that, or do you want me to say a few words about it?
Sure, I'm happy to report on that. Yes, we had our regular meeting with the chief before this meeting tonight. We talked about some of the data collection that the department is doing, specifically regarding traffic stops. So they've been collecting that data, and we kind of talked about that. Mike, do you want to add anything to that right now?
A lot of the data collection we're still fine tuning, but it is in line with collecting data to respond to some of the concerns going on around the nation, specifically concerned with race and ethnicity and over policing in certain communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we talked about that. We addressed the potential of a citizens, we haven't settled on a name, but an advisory committee or board in some sense of the word. So John and I have been working with the chief, with some other law enforcement officials, PA chiefs who've been reaching out to a lot of people to gather information about whether or not, these different municipalities have a working group that has the community members meeting, regularly with law enforcement. And obviously in the climate that we've been in the past year, I think the need for that is strong. I think the want for that from a large majority of the community is strong. And so, yeah, we've been talking with members of our community about it. That's something I think people want. And so we're going to be doing our homework. It's somewhat of a difficult situation just because I'm not sure that there's many models that are out there yet. So, but we're doing the legwork and we're working with the chief, and I think it's going well. Yeah. Am I missing anything?
Also, we talked about the update on the body cam rollout. Chief, why don't you expand on that, how that's going?
So it's going very well. All of our officers, all of our uniformed officers are wearing body cameras every shift. We've received great feedback from them on the ease of the use of the body cameras, and there has been no concerns over the implementation of body cameras. Everybody was kind of looking forward to the evidence that would be produced by them having the body cameras on them. So far, so good.
That's great.
And we also had some discussion, just an update on the statement of job expectations and the evaluation instrument that Ashley and I have developed. And we're now at the point where, the board had a chance to weigh on it, and now we sent it on to the solicitor and the township staff for their reconciliation of the job expectations as we laid it out with the township code. So that's where we're at this point. So that's the next step that needs to be done with that. And then the last thing we talked about was the salary discussion on newly promoted command staff. I think we're going to have an executive session on that. Is that correct, Ashley, Sean? To make that discussion?
Session, yes. Discussion of salary for individuals is an executive session topic.
Right. Well, that's going to have to be done shortly because the command staff is going to be promoted March the 26th. So we are going to have to set up a session for that shortly.
So Derek, could you help poll the board for its availability?
I will send an email tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Chief, I had one thing to ask you. Thank you for kind of the idea here of implementing this committee to look at traffic safety and a reach out to the public, once a quarter to hear what's on the public's minds with respect to traffic safety in the township. Could you just kind of describe in your mind at least what that conversation, that committee, that way that will work with the public? How will you engage? What issues are out there and sort through kind of general complaints versus specific problems, and just how you envisage that really working for us?
So traffic complaints compose a lot of the concerns of the township residents, whether it's in a small neighborhood or at last month's meeting, we heard about traffic at 5 Points and Westchester Pike with the new Wawa. So we wanted to come up with a method for any or all of our township residents to come in and speak with the traffic unit, not only about their problems, but about the different methods they have for analyzing the traffic in their areas and the methods or the answers they have if these problems are found to be worthy of a solution by the township. So it's going to give any and all of our citizens a chance to come in and speak directly to the traffic unit, our current experts on traffic. And hopefully together they can come up with a solution that makes certain neighborhoods or areas of the township safer and the residents happier.
Very good, thank you.
Well,
can I just make a quick note to that? Derek, I've been noticing at the 5 Points intersection with Route 3 that for the first time I ever noticed it, that the left-hand signal was also allowing us to go straight through the intersection. Whereas normally I would have had to stop at the intersection until all that had cleared. Has there been has there been some change to the signaling there at that intersection?
I can get with Rick and see, but I don't believe there's been any recent change.
I can answer
I'm going to take pictures of. Oh, okay, good.
There has been no change. You're allowed to make a left turn with oncoming traffic, providing you yield the right of way. And that's consistent with the way it was installed.
Yeah, I think that what she's talking about, Rick, is if she's coming down the hill
north
there,
on 5 Points.
On 5 Points. If she's coming down the hill to Route 3, if there's no opposing traffic making a left-hand turn out of the Wawa, then the light automatically, I believe, gives you a straight ahead and a left turn simultaneously.
Okay,
yes.
I've never seen that before. I go through that intersection so frequently, but I never saw it having a left-hand turn and the other signal going straight through. Okay, well, I was hopeful that you guys were on it so quickly. We've already fixed the problem.
It's dependent on traffic conditions. And again, that's an adaptive traffic signal control system. So if the system sees that there's no traffic in a particular direction, it will accommodate that and make changes accordingly. So it might occur
Right.
today and it might not occur tomorrow, depending on the current traffic conditions.
Yeah,
Okay.
if there's nobody on that opposing left turn stripe in the road, then it lets you go through.
Yeah, I've only seen it once.
It doesn't happen very often, but it can.
Well,
you
thank
get
you for the
that right.
information.
Are there any other questions for Chief Carroll? Is there any member of the public that would like to ask a question of the chief? Very good. Well, thank you, Chief, for the report.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on. I do know we have, the board was provided with information from Good Fellowship's February report and from the Westchester Fire Department, but we review that quarterly with folks from those organizations, so it's not a discussion topic tonight. So agenda item number 13 is the Board of Supervisors announcements. Ashley, do you have any announcements?
Yes, I do. I have an announcement. This is from the Sustainability Advisory Committee. So as we discussed, I guess it was last month, the Sustainability Advisory Committee is putting together an Arbor Day celebration. I just want to remind everybody that's going to be taking place on April 23rd at 5 p.m. At 700 Old Fern Hill Road. It's the site of the 300-year-old Weeping Beach. I think that's how old it is. So yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody about that. And I think that's all I have tonight. You heard from the chief, so.
Thanks, Ashley. John, do you have any announcements?
Just quickly, since the last regular board meeting, I attended a couple webinars. One was on stormwater fees, a legal perspective. It was put on by the Pennsylvania Society of Township Supervisors. And then also on March 11th, I attended a stormwater management seminar that was hosted by Representative Christina Sappi. A lot of good information was made available at both of those seminars.
Thanks, John. Hugh, have you any announcements?
Well, no, not at this point.
Thank you, Hugh. Robin, any announcements?
No, not at this point.
Thanks, Robin. I have two announcements. One, the board met in an executive session on March the 11th to discuss personnel matters. And secondly, Robin, I have to correct you. The actual Ridley Creek watershed stream cleanup is this Saturday. It's coming up. It's not in April this year. It's actually been brought forward to March. So it's this Saturday, March the 20th from 9 to 11:30. And we have the location in West Goshen at the creek behind McDonald's at the intersection of Gay Street and Montgomery Avenue. So if you can make it, great. Even if you haven't signed up, you can register there on the day. So hopefully I'll get to see you there. I will be there with my waders on, trying to clean that damn culvert out one more time.
Yeah, I'll be there with you.
All right, and we do have announcement about the fact that Chester County municipalities and West Goshen will be receiving some aid as part of the federal relief package that was just passed, but I'm going to let Derek speak to the dollar amount on that. So that ends the supervisor's announcements, and Derek, you're up. Township manager announcements this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you just alluded to, the only thing I have tonight is to announce that per the federal legislation that just passed and was just signed in by the president, we were earmarked, West Goshen and all Chester County municipalities were earmarked specific amounts based on population. And West Goshen was actually fortunate enough to be earmarked just over $2.2 million to be used specifically on sewer infrastructure, water infrastructure, and broadband infrastructure was the initial terminology we got. We are still sort of in touch with our congressional delegation to get some more specifics on that. Most notably, if it means we can use it for stormwater. But otherwise, it's pretty good news in what has been a pretty tumultuous year. And yeah, so we are going to be obviously taking that to the board and seeing what exactly we can fund with that money. But right now, it's looking at $2.2 million for sewer, water, or broadband. So we don't have broadband here as far as the township run. So it sort of narrows it down. But again, we are still in touch with the congressional delegation to get more specifics on exactly how we can use it. And we hope to get more specifics soon, but otherwise good information and a good day for West Goshen and for all the Chester County municipalities that are sort of, as we talk about on a monthly basis, hurting from an infrastructure perspective. So thank you.
Derek, my understanding is we get 50% of this amount within 60 days of the president's signature, and then the following 50% has to be 12 months later, is what I read in a press article. So is that your understanding too?
That was the initial information, and then we have until the end of 2024 to expend it. So yes, but I will say, Sean, there's always seems to be evolving information trickling out with these sort of rollouts. So we will certainly update if any other information along the dates come out. But as of right now, that is our understanding.
Okay, thanks, Derek.
Yep.
Agenda item number 15, Township Engineers Stormwater Announcements and Woodlands at Greystone Update. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We already discussed the basin retrofit project, so I won't do anything further on that. But we also continue with our Ravens Lane stormwater pipe replacement project. That is proceeding and is somewhere around a third complete at this point. So we will be continuing on with that as weather allows. That's pretty much it for stormwater. With regard to Greystone, we completed the placement of 3 prefabricated pedestrian bridges in the trail system last week. All 3 of those abutments had been installed prior to that, and then the prefabricated bridges were put in place last week. So the work is progressing on the trail system currently. We're also getting ready to get back to roadway paving as weather begins to moderate and allows that to occur. And of course, the housing construction continues unabated. And that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Rick, one quick question. Hang on, Hugh. One quick question on the Ravens Lane stormwater project. So you're a third of the way into the project. Has there been any field issues that have necessitated change orders from the contractor to this point?
We're working on a field issue at this time that will most likely result in a change order.
Is it substantial or is it fairly minor?
I would categorize it as substantial.
Okay. Can you keep the board informed on that as we go along? Thanks.
I believe you will hear about it in the morning.
Okay.
Well, we all going to hear about it in the morning?
Will.
Don't leave us in suspense.
Hugh, you had a question?
Yeah, no, I really had a comment for Rick and the crew, Dave included. The spillway at North Hill Lake, where the work was done here last year, is working absolutely beautifully, and the neighborhood in general is very, very appreciative of the work that was done.
Thank you for your comment, Hugh. That's great.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? What's the status of the Pine Valley Circle and Amelia Drive stormwater project? Is that what's the status of that? Are we ready to start that?
No, it's still under design. We're in the process of finalizing the design plans, but they're not finalized yet.
Okay. What about getting is there a need to get right of way signed by the residents along that Pine Valley Circle roadway?
I believe there is a small amount that we're going to need to get due to some changes in the piping, but I don't believe it's significant.
Okay, so that's still pending?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Are there any other questions for the township engineer this evening, either from the board or the public? Very good. Thank you, Rick.
Welcome.
Hi, it's Margie. I just got to say, I'm dying to know what Rick wants to share with everyone about the Ravens Lane. Can we be transparent?
Well, obviously he hasn't quite prepared what he needs to share for the board yet, so we'll give him the time he needs to inform the board appropriately. Thank you, Margie.
We just found out about this in the last 24 hours, so we'll be taking it to the board soon.
Okay, great. Would the board share it with me, please? Somebody?
Well, once we're aware of what the issue is and what needs to be addressed, you'll hear about it through our public process, Margie.
Okay, thank you very much.
Agenda item number 16, zoning officer's announcement. Bill, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regards to the zoning hearing board, we've been fairly busy, as everyone can see. The zoning hearing board did render their decisions for the Luxor and also for the 1154 Westchester Pike applications. The zoning hearing board did find in favor for both applicants, allowing them variances. With regards to new applications, application 08 of 2021, which is 1135 Pottstown Pike. This is a use variance request this was previously the 3-lot subdivision that was approved years ago by the board, owned by the Jarahian family. That it was not part of the Greystone development. This was a completely separate subdivision. The Jarahians have sold it to a Mr. DePisco. He and his wife would like to turn the old house into a antique shop, which is a complete change of use from residential to commercial retail, which requires him to go to the zoning hearing board for a variance. Now, I've advised this gentleman, I can't tell you how many times, that the bar for a use variance is extremely high and that he should be represented by an attorney. He feels as though he's been in the real estate business buying and selling for a long time. He feels he can do it on his own, so be it. He's going to represent himself. Now, I originally had said that I didn't have any concern with this. However, the day that I went out there to post the property, which was after I had sent this email to you, giving you all the applications, and that was that to pull out of that driveway and make a left turn onto Pottstown Pike is virtually impossible. It's dangerous, especially, I mean, at certain times of the day, it's probably not so bad, but even the Wawa, that's currently regulated, and it was regulated probably through the land development process, that no left turns out of their access on Pottstown Pike during certain times of the day. So I had initially said I didn't think we should take a position on that application, and I still don't think we should take a position. However, I think we should send a recommendation to the zoning hearing board that they may want to consider, and that would be that they put on some type of conditions for turning. And in doing so, I had a conversation with the zoning hearing board solicitor, and he had actually told me that it would be his recommendation, and is always his recommendation to his board, that if they were to provide this variance to this property owner, because it's a change of use, Mr. Thompson said that his advice to his zoning hearing boards in a change of use situation is always to send that applicant back to the township for land development. Even though the building footprint is not changing, land development would probably be a good way to handle this. I was speaking with Rick today. He said in the past we've done this through grading permits. But if it were to go back through go to land development, we can address the turn issues and potentially any screening issues between his property and the park that it backs up to, and the ball fields owned by the Westchester School District. Access to that property could also be a concern. Again, he's coming off of a state road, and we may, through the land development process, say that you have to use the access that was provided through the original land development of the 3 lot off of Aram. So it would be my suggestion with this matter that we don't take a position. However, Kristen drafts a letter to Mr. Thompson addressing the township's concerns with this, if this variance were to be approved.
Bill, I would think that they'd have to amend their HOP if the use changes and it's currently just probably a minimum driveway. If it becomes a commercial property, that may have a different classification for the driveway entering onto Pottstown Pike. I'm not sure I agree with Mark on whether legally we could ask a condition to make them go through a land development. I mean, it would really depend upon the scope of what else we would require from them. So if the use changed, which again, it's a very, very high burden, basically if they prove that they can't use it for any use that the ordinance allows, which we know they can use it as a residence. So it's sort of a hat in hand variance request, but I would be curious. I mean, I would think that if it becomes a commercial store, if the zoning hearing board were to grant the variance, you would have an opportunity to apply any zoning requirements, which that would then kick it over into land development. So I wouldn't want it to be that we would just say that no matter what, they have to do land development. I'd want it to be worded in a way that if in order to comply with the requirements for a retail use, there's other requirements in the zoning ordinance for them to install parking or different driveways, et cetera, that then is what constitutes land development. I just want to make that distinction.
I also just want to add a couple points because this is a pretty unique zoning request, and sort of looking at the township from in totality and sort of what we're dealing with overdevelopment and redevelopment and everything like that, and going back towards our comprehensive plan. It is, as Bill said, it's a high burden to prove this use. I will say it's, when you look at the use that it actually is zoned for, which is residential, it would be, I think he's proposing an antique shop. So it's a relatively, I know we're using the word commercial, but I think it's a relatively benign commercial use regarding, an antique shop and traffic and all that. And not that I'm advocating one way or the other, but I want the board to understand that if the zoning hearing does not actually grant him the request, and that could be possibly happen based on everything we've been talking about, do not be surprised in the future because it's zoned residential. If they comply with Saldo, and Bill and I talked about this, 2 McMansions spring up right there at some point if he sells it because he's not, getting what he needs from the township from a zoning perspective. I'm not saying that should be one way or the other, something the zoning hearing board should actually consider. I'm just saying the board should be aware that something is probably going to be built there. And if it's a by right use, it might be residents that we can't really do anything about, and we'll have similar traffic issues, and could have some eyesore issues as well, depending on what the houses look like. So just to put that in the board's mind from, again, sort of a totality, how we always talk about directions we want the township to go. And that's definitely a consideration of something, not a consideration because the ball's not in our court, but just something to be aware of and consider.
And to Derek's point, it is going to be very benign. The owner projects a very low customer volume count daily. I think he says 6 or 7 cars would be his hope for a daily visit to his store. And he's basically already told me, which is another reason he said he wasn't going to use a lawyer, because he knows that if he doesn't get his variance, then what he's going to do is he's going to come back in the land development subdivision process and subdivide it out and put two lots there. put two lots there. And at that point, we have no control over that existing structure. And that existing structure, I think, was the original hunting lodge on that property. And that was Mr. DePrisco's point to us was, listen, I'm trying to save an older building and keep the character, which we don't disagree with. We don't disagree with him. And his argument is as well that there are other non-conforming uses already there. There's a veterinary. There's the Campbell's Light Shop. M.R. Cockerham has their contractor's shop there, as well as, I mean, Wawa's not non-conforming. Wawa is a conforming use, but you have a Wawa within eyesight of his property. I mean, these are all things to consider, but he has already told us that if he doesn't get his variance, then he is just going to subdivide the property, and whoever buys it can do what they want. Now, he is
Yeah,
I'm
much more inclined. I am much more inclined to give him the variance, knowing that it's going to be an antique shop with a low volume of traffic and customers, than not knowing what it could become.
I mean, at this, all we can do is send our recommendation over to the zoning hearing board as to what we would like. But again, they have disagreed with us in the past on issues, which they're their own body and it's within their purview. And then that just tells us as we go back and change ordinances, and that's why the zoning ordinance is a living, breathing document.
Mm-hmm.
The building is how old, Bill?
What's that?
How old is the building? The existing building?
I'm not sure. In his documents, he cites it as the original hunting lodge for the that property.
That would be the 1900 roughly then.
Just 1908, Hugh.
Yeah, that should be preserved, I would think. So, thank you.
Bill, a couple of questions. So there is currently no driveway access from Aram Avenue onto this particular lot, correct?
Correct. Currently, the lot is served by a stone access drive off of Pottstown Pike, and their parking area is stoned as well. And if this use were to be granted, he's going to have to pay.
And when the was it a 3-lot subdivision that happened here? Was it already 3 lots, or were 3 lots created, a few years ago whenever it came to the board?
3 lots were created. However, the plan has not been recorded. So the plan is technically dead. However, under the MPC, we can grant a 90-day exception letter. So we can grant an exception to that approval. He's still within that window of time where we can grant that that exception where the document could still be recorded. However, before that plan was done, or after that plan was approved, the Jirakians and the Woodlands folks put a monument sign on which was one of the lots. So that is why he couldn't have 3 lots now if he wanted, because there's a monument sign sitting on the one lot.
But originally the board had approved making this a 3-lot residential subdivision of this property. So it presumably thought it was okay to build 3 new houses on this particular site.
That is
That's
correct.
how it's zoned.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
So,
and this point was off of Aram.
Yeah. So, to me, if the zoning hearing board does not accept the use, it's back to the original approved residential development of what would now be 2 lots, given the fact that you can't divide it into 3 anymore. Was that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Yeah.
Okay. So are the board members, do any of you have strong feelings about taking a position to or a recommendation to the zoning hearing board on this? Or do you wish the zoning hearing board to hear the case this applicant makes and let them decide?
I prefer to have the zoning hearing board decide.
Yeah, let them go through it.
Yeah, just be neutral.
Okay, there you go, Bill. Neutral position from the board.
Okay, thank you. Again, application 9 of 2021 for the Stanberry Associates. That application has been formally withdrawn because we have a provision in our zoning ordinance, 8472M parens 2, which allows me to grant a 6-month extension of a variance that was granted by the zoning hearing board for a land development or special exception. So I did grant that. They now must have their land development filed with the township by October 16th. And if they do not, they have to go back to the zoning hearing board and seek the relief that was already provided to them. The delay, just to give you an update on that approval, the delay that has caused them to not apply for their land development is they've discovered a force main running through the property that they didn't know was there. So we're actually having a meeting on Thursday with the owner of that property to give us an update on what they're going to be doing. So then finally, application 10 of 2021, which is 325 North 5 Points Road. This applicant seek a de minimis variance from section 84-14.9 parens 4, parens F, to be able to extend the front porch beyond the building setback line in the front yard. Again, I recommend we don't take a position on this to stay consistent with other applications that we've heard in regards to that type of matter that we've had in the past.
Any board comments on that particular application?
No, I'm comfortable staying neutral on that one as well.
Question, Bill, and this is at the Discovery Daycare Center site, correct? The 5 Points Road?
Mm-hmm.
This is lot number 4 that's asking for the variance. Any of those other lots, like lot number 6 or 7, is that also going to be requesting a similar variance given the lot location and the way it's laid out?
No, the builder and I discussed this a couple weeks ago. He is not going to need any further variances for those lots for any front yard relief. However, you will be seeing some amendments coming before you to be considered for the zoning ordinance in April, because we don't have a definition of a through lot. So lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, technically by zoning standards, they don't have a rear yard. They have 2 front yards and 2 side yards. So we don't allow certain things to be built in a front yard, which would be a deck. So he had approached me today regarding some deck concerns on other lots, and I said, you're going to need a variance because we don't allow decks in the front yard. He goes, well, that's not a front. I said, well, by zoning standards it is. So, but John, to your point, lot 4 is the only lot that's going to require this type of variance.
So those lots 1 through 4 are considered front yards because they back onto North 5 Points Road as well as the cul-de-sac?
Well, yes.
Okay. So Bill, no position on this one from the board.
Very good. Then I have nothing further this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Agenda item number 17, approval of the Board of Supervisors meeting minutes of February the 16th, 2021 and March the 3rd, 2021.
I make a motion to adopt the minutes from February 16, and what was the other time frame. Sorry.
March the 3rd.
March the 3rd, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second. Yes.
Thank you. Are there any corrections or adjustments to the minutes that were provided as draft to the board?
Yeah, just a couple. First of all, Derek, again, compliments to you on the in-depth minutes here. They're good job. On page 6 on March the 3rd, it's just a minor typo. Page 6, add with a private developer. Right now, there's no, just says a developer. Just add the word with a private developer.
Do you know what paragraph that is, John?
Yeah, let me see which one I can pull this out from. Hold on.
It's the second paragraph from the bottom, Derek, on page 6. It starts off with Mr. Davis asked Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, got it.
Yep. It just goes to prove people actually do read these, Derek, so don't feel like you're doing it for nothing. Yeah, it's well, it's also in the middle of the page there. It has to do with Ms. Camp explained her thought process and coming up with the current language wherein the university would essentially have some sort of contractual relationship, and there insert the word with a private entity.
Okay, got it.
And then on page 7, add, okay, this is the second paragraph. Mr. Walsh asked about a quote unquote managed by contract with the university and the developer, just an ER on developer.
Got it.
That's it. Thanks.
Yep.
Are there any other corrections or adjustments to the meeting minutes?
Nope, looks good. Thanks, Derek.
Derek, on page 15 on March the 3rd, just my name spelled wrong in the last sentence. If you wouldn't mind correcting it, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Actually, it's the February meeting, not the March meeting. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Are there any other board comments? Are there any public comments on the draft meeting minutes? Hearing none, ready to take a roll call vote. Ashley?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
You?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
Sean? Aye. Thank you. Agenda item number 18, approval of Treasurer's report dated February the 28th, 2021 for the General Fund, the Sewer Revenue Fund, the Waste and Recycling Fund, and the Capital Reserve Fund, and the bills to be paid from these funds. Do I have a motion to approve these reports and pay the bills?
Yes, I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Who do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Robin. Are there any board comments or questions on the reports or the bills to be paid? I actually have one that was sparked by the earlier conversation about the cable TV franchise. So under that, is it just Comcast and Verizon receive payments for franchises, or is there any other vendors included in the amount that's documented in those receipts for the general fund?
I believe it's just Comcast and Verizon.
Okay. So Derek, further to that action you took earlier to provide the board kind of the history on the receipts for these franchise fees, if you could break it out between Comcast and Verizon for the last couple of years, that would be great.
Yeah, we can. Let me talk to Christine and see how she groups it. I'm sure it's possible, but I just want to be 100% sure she doesn't group everything together.
Well, just following up on that question, the item on page 1 for cable TV franchise, is that for Verizon or is it for Verizon and Comcast?
Yeah, that's my question, John. Is it both of them, or what is the proportion of each in there?
Exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that sort of goes back to my point of having to hash that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's information we can get, Sean. It's just how quickly I can get it, depending how quickly she can break it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's an informational question we're trying to get answered, and we're going to revisit this approval of the ordinance at the next meeting, so it's a couple of weeks away.
Yeah.
Understood.
Are there any other questions on the Treasurer's report or the bills? Are there any public comments or questions on these two items? Hearing none, we're ready to take a roll call vote. Ashley?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Hugh?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
Sean says aye. Motion passes 5-0. Agenda item number 19, open public comment. Are there any items that the public wish to bring before the board this evening?
Hi, this is Margie.
Go ahead, Margie.
Hi, this is just in reference to the discussion with the zoning officer's announcements. And I have raised this concern or clarification, a couple of years ago. And it was brought to light. This is a perfect night to bring it up because you were just discussing it. But I'm reading a transcript from a land development hearing for the links. So I have the transcript in front of me from April 11th, 2007. And in it, Ms. Camp's predecessor, Skip Bryan, when discussing the difference between the zoning hearing board and the board of supervisors, because there was an application from the developer before both boards. So he just quotes this one thing. He says, but neither one has the ability to influence the other board with regard to its application before it. He said, if I can just clear the record up. So there was some discussion before that. And so, like I said, if I don't know, just clarification on that, because I do feel when Mr. Webb asked for a recommendation, you are in fact possibly influencing the zoning hearing board. And according to the previous solicitor, it sounds like that is not allowed.
Well, I don't know the context within which Mr. Bryan made that comment, but the board needs to understand that in any zoning application, the Board of Supervisors already has party status. So it is not unusual, and it is completely consistent with the municipality's planning code that every zoning application be reviewed by the Board of Supervisors to determine whether you want to take a position. The reason is that the zoning ordinance is something that you as the legislators have written. I know this particular board didn't write this particular zoning ordinance, but that's what the law is. And if there's something in the zoning ordinance that you don't like, you have the power to change it by enacting zoning amendments. So I don't necessarily 100% agree with at least what you stated, but I didn't get the context in which Mr. Bryan made that comment. And it is appropriate for every zoning application to be reviewed by the board and the board to make a decision on whether or not it would like to take a position. A lot of townships, what the Board of Supervisors directs is that each zoning application be reviewed by their planning commission, so that the planning commission then makes a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors as to whether you want to take a position or not. So it's not inappropriate for the board to do that.
Okay, and then to follow up on that as well, since the zoning ordinance is a living document, I am requesting that the board or the solicitor get a legal opinion or decision on whether or not the ordinance section about fire hydrants on private drives can in fact be charged separately from taxes we already paid. And I ask that because of the second class township code, which lays out 3 specific ways a second class township can charge for fire hydrant service. And the way West Goshen Township does it, the way I read it, is not consistent with the second class township code.
We've answered that question a couple times in memorandum to the township. So that issue has already been reviewed, researched, and provided to the board.
Can the board, since it is a living document, find out exactly how many fire hydrants are not being paid for with taxes and make a policy decision if there's a chance that ordinance might want to be rescinded, or that part of the ordinance? I mean, we're talking about out of over 500 fire hydrants, we're talking, it might only be 20 hydrants. I mean, it's a very small amount. And when I go through this treasurer's report every month and I see the expenditures on retirement gifts and flowers, that those don't serve a public purpose, and taxpayer money shouldn't be going to, I believe it's illegal for tax dollars to be spent on things like that. So the fact that I have a picture of a police car on the on-ramp to the bypass, whether it was an accident or a pullover. So there could very easily be fire service needed if an accident would occur, and they would use the hydrant. It's a public hydrant. It's not the Lynx hydrant. So it's a public hydrant. It serves the public, especially going back to now with the private, $220,000 spent on private. I mean, it's a discussion, and I'm simply not going to let it go. Mostly because you won't change the minutes to reflect the truth of my comments from a couple of years ago. So I'm not going to let it go.
Margie, I'm just going to, you've brought this issue before this board in particular, I know at least once, maybe twice in the last 15 months. And I'm sure you brought it up before. And we have a solicitor's opinion about where we stand with respect to the fire hydrants. This board has reviewed it, and the board has decided not to change the situation at this time. So thank you for your comments, but we're not going to do anything about it.
Okay, so then again, half of the fire hydrants in Greystone will be public and half will be private.
I don't know the particulars of the Greystone development. Casey's usually the one who responds to that particular comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or issues that the public wish to raise tonight? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, you do.
Thank you, Hugh. Is there a second?
And I second.
Thank you. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, you too.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Thanks.
Okay.